Spotlight, lectures and performances on and around Albany State University.
But what we're excited about in the midst of doing everything we're embarking upon is that we were embraced by a gentleman by the name of Dr. C.T. Vivian. And sometimes when people can put a stamp of approval on what you're doing, just their name, just their character, just their integrity brings greater value to what you're doing. And it also gets you even that much more excited. So I want to introduce the real person y'all came out here today, because y'all don't know me. You came out to hear Dr. C.T. Vivian. Dr. Vivian is literally, this man is 88 years old. He was one of the main lieutenants of Dr. Martin Luther King, served on that executive team. He is our bridge. He is our bridge that literally can connect us from where to where we want to go. And being 88, he has such a great vision. He's not looking down, he's looking ahead. And he's caring for us still, as he has done for the last 70, 80 years. So I want to introduce to your front today, Dr. C.T. Vivian.
Cheyenne Webb and Rachel West were school children at the time.
And it was amazing to see how many teachers had participated. I remember vividly on that day when I saw my teachers marching with me, just for the right to vote.
And it was, teachers then was somewhat like up in the upper class, People look up to teachers then and look up to preachers. They were somewhat like leaders for us back then.
Then the undertakers got a group and they marched. The beauticians got a group, they marched. Everybody marched after teachers marched because teachers had more influence than they ever dreamed in the community.
And we want you to know, gentlemen, that every one of you, we know your badge numbers, we know your names.
In mid-February, Reverend C.T. Vivian, an SCLC organizer, confronted Sheriff Clark and his deputies on the courthouse steps.
But believe me, there were those that followed Hitler, like you blindly follow this Sheriff Clark, who didn't think their day would come. But they also were pulled into the courtrooms, and they were also given their death sentences. You are not this bad a racist, but you're a racist in the same way that Hitler was a racist. And you're blindly following a man that's leading you down a road that's going to bring you into federal court. Now, I am representing people in Dallas County, and I have that right to do so. Now, and as I represent them, and they can speak for themselves, is what I'm saying true? Yeah. Is it what you think and what you believe? Yeah. For this is not a local problem, gentlemen. This is a national problem. You can't keep anyone in the United States from voting without hurting the rights of all other citizens. Democracy is built on this. This is why every man has the right to vote, regardless.
And he started shouting at me that I was a Hitler, I was a brute, that I was a Nazi. I don't remember everything he called me. And I did lose my temper then.
We have come to be here because they are registering at this time. And so we have come to register. And this is our reason for being here. We're not just blinding me with that light. We're not holding. Move back.
With Jim Clark, it was a clear engagement between the forces of movement and the forces of the structure that would destroy movement. It was a clear engagement between those who wished the fullness of their personalities to be met and those that would destroy us physically and psychologically. You do not walk away from that. This is what movement meant. Movement meant that finally we were encountering on a mass scale the evil that had been destroying us on a mass scale. You do not walk away from that. You continue to answer it.
If we're wrong, why don't you arrest us?
Why don't you get out in front of the camera and go on?
It's not a matter of being in front of the camera. It's a matter of facing your sheriff and facing your judge. We're willing to be beaten for democracy. And you misuse democracy in the street. You beat people studying in order that they will not have the privilege to vote. You beat me in the side and then hide your blows. So I don't need to leave. We have come to register to vote. Hey, everybody on the left, let's all go. You make the left me.
I'm here to tell you tonight that the businessmen, the mayor of this city, the police commissioner of this city, And everybody in the white power structure of this city must take a responsibility for everything that Jim Crow does in this community.
The force of 7 people shall break down segregation and admit the Negroes into our theaters, into our swimming pools, into our...
Sean Thurman's 1948 presidential run on the segregationist platform was unsuccessful. But it wasn't until 1971 that the Supreme Court finally outlawed segregated pools and beaches, 17 years after the integration of American schools. The effort to integrate beaches and pools intensified here in 1964 in the former slave trading port of St. Augustine, Florida, when a civil rights leader literally drew a new line in the sand and asked former state attorney Dan Warren for the protection of the law.
He was wearing a bathing suit. He said, well, I want to go swimming. And I said, well, be my guest. You're probably a dyer. And he said, well, you don't understand, Mr. Warren. Every time we want to go swimming at the public beach, the Klan interferes with that, and they beat us up.
Lunch counter sit-ins turned into beach wade-ins, and a special force of state troopers was sent in to keep segregationists from pummeling the protesters.
They formed 2 lines, way out in the ocean in full uniform. Demonstrators came in. Well, the Klan was waiting, and they had pickup trucks parked on the beach, and in the trunks and in the beds of the trucks, they had surveyor stakes. And they'd grab the surveyor stakes and try to break through that line.
What did swimming represent to segregationists that created such hostility?
Fear.
Of what?
Fear against going and sharing the same water with blacks.
44% of black children live under the poverty level right now. 36% of black families live under the poverty level, and that's the highest it's ever been since they've been keeping figures on us. Now, let's say it this way. Let's say it is too much and you drop out or pushed out is what we call it, being pushed out. Then 30% of a white dropouts are unemployed, but 71.4% of black dropouts are unemployed. If you're a black male, the study said that we may see a generation of young black men who've never had a steady job. Even if you get to college, a black man with a college education will make slightly less in a lifetime than a white man with a high school education.
But let me stop you, Dr. Vivian, because I know that there are a number of people listening to this show, and no doubt those of you in the seminar who say, well, that is not my fault, and the opportunities have been given, and so we need to discuss why those statistics are the way they are.
Yeah, and let's deal with that as the principle.
Okay.
What America doesn't deal with, and if you got in half of our confrontations there, is that what white America doesn't deal with when it comes to blacks is cause and effect. Yeah. They say blacks are like this, but they never deal with why we're like that, right? That's why I turn and say, are blacks treated the same in the society? And of course, every white person knows we're not. But what they don't realize, Oprah, is what that actually does, the depth of it, is that their mistreatment, their choosing not to accept blacks, creates a depth of suffering and death. In fact, there is nothing in this society.
It starts a chain that never gets broken.
In fact, chain is the good word because it's a cycle. Everything works on everything else. In fact, racism destroys more people psychologically and physically than any other factor in American society.
I felt sorry for Clark. You know why? Because he thought that everything that he was doing was what they wanted. And then they turned on him because they began to look like fools themselves. So they blamed him. They didn't blame the rest of them, right? And that's the way it works, they found out that the world, the whole city found out that the world thought they were backward, saw them as backward. Clark had to take the blame for all of it. Why, he was really just doing what they wanted. And then they try to get past it. Is that this is the kind of world we live in. Well, let's get down to where we are now, right? Is when we think of the civil rights movement, we think of a period when we had great leadership. Martin Luther King was the man, was the leader. He was the person for the entire generation. Martin brought us more light, not black people, but America, more light and decency than it's had for years and years and years. He stepped right in the middle and changed the very trend of history. When we look at that, we have to think back that there were only several people like that in our history. Frederick Douglass was the first great one. I walk on campus and I think of, I can't help but think of what a campus means and what it really has meant to us and how far that we've really come. And I think of Douglass, who taught himself how to read. Tried taking 26 forms and making words out of them and change them into something you can read and share with other people. Try it sometimes. I had an English teacher try it on us one time, and it was impossible, right? Well, Douglass taught himself to learn how to read and write just by listening to the sounds, by taking letter by letter, and then putting them back together over a period of time. And he became the greatest orator in America at the time. When we think of genius, W.B. Du Bois comes to mind. W.B. Du Bois was so brilliant that his first book was on the Harvard shelf of that selected group of books that ever Harvard freshmen had to read before they would allow him to become a sophomore, right? It's when you think of the genius that we've had, and then you think of not only Douglass and W.B. Du Bois, but this famous Southerner that my brother loves. What's his name? Booker T. Washington, exactly right. Booker T. was as brilliant as W.B. Du Bois, but there's no way to see it because one was a great administrator. One took people that didn't have any education, all right, and brought us from nothing to something, right? Is that W.B. Du Bois just wanted to deal with the talented 10, all right? He escaped having to deal with all the rest of the folk. But anyway, we had great leaders is the idea. Every period there's been a great leader. The last, of course, was Martin Luther King Jr., right? Now, there has been no great leader since Martin. That puts a challenge on us, right? It makes us have to understand that we must become our own leaders. That is not an easy thing to do and say, because there was great strategies for all the rest. That's what each one of them is great for, not because they could speak, but because they had a strategy that made the change. Each one of them. Now, we haven't had that, which gives us a special responsibility. And we have to become our own leaders until up out of that arises another great one. We were fortunate enough to create a president. The civil rights movement created Obama. Genius. We're very thankful that he came on the scene when he did. It seems impossible that the first man you really have that has a chance to become president of the United States and black, right, is that happens to be of such quality that he puts all the rest that we've had for some time on another side of a scale. Now, what do we do? That's the important thing at this level. And when we talk about it, we have to see that we not only have to become our own leaders, but we have to share it with every other person. As you heard the expression, meet everyone at their need. That's what we're about right now. Going across this state, and we got 7 other states lined up, that we're going across those states. We're going to try to meet with as many individuals and institutions and organizations as possible. For what reason? So that we can fill that gap. Give you another one that's so important for us right now. We are in a depression. Some call it a recession. But if you're black in America, it is a depression. And when we begin to look clearly at that, what it really means is that we have to do more to become better than most others in the society. How do we overcome this? This makes a tremendous difference. And it comes up to being your own leader. It comes up to sharing with. It comes up just not to taking for yourself. It's not learning and running. It is learning and sharing. We're back to the Booker T. Washingtons now, aren't we? Right? That's the way we think. Every one of the great ones have to still be in the stream of our understanding in order for us to become the people that all intended for us to be and become and share. That's where we are now. This is what we're about. How do we, in this period, get ourselves ready for what's going to happen after this depression is over? I was here for the last one. As he told you, I'm a little older than most of you. In fact, my son says, "Dad, how was it way back when the Earth's crust was cooling?" The thing about it is that when we look at it, is that it's been a long time, but it hasn't been a long time. It seems like it was years and years ago, yet it isn't, because we're back where we were in a depression-type understanding of our situation, is that we must share that, right? But we now must come with new understandings, but with new techniques, new methods. The world has moved on from there. So have we, but not as much as we must if we're going to meet with what we feel now. Is that if we're going to really share in the new world that's coming, when we must share and make it in spite of, there's not going to be any affirmative action. There's not going to be any help along the way. We're going to have to compete not only with ourselves, but we're going to have to compete with the world. This is no longer a place where you compete simply with the people with something going in your favor from the past. It is, in fact, that the world is coming to our doorstep. In fact, right now, when I answer the telephone, I don't know whether the person I'm talking to is from India or whether they are from South Carolina, right? I don't know where they're from. And it's not a matter of caring. It's a matter of having to live with it. It's a matter of having to compete with the world. And so we have to make certain that every one of us, past and present, is really ready for that kind of task. Our concern is with everyone in this nation. Our concern is with competing with everyone in this world. How do we do that? And we have to get ready for it and understand what's on, whether it's in your particular way of thinking or not. You're going to have to learn to think differently. It's just not a matter of what was during the civil rights movement. It's a matter of the new movement we must create. When we think of it in that way, then we know that we must get ready for the world in which we live and can. Is that we're here this morning to help with that process. Is that we have found that corporations in this country have moved so far ahead that very few of us on the ground, not black, white, yellow, pink, polka dot, doesn't matter, understand how you take a company from nothing and make it a billionaire company in 4 or 5 years. We're beginning to learn how difficult it is to come by the new techniques. We went to Manpower, the third largest manpower organization in the world. And we showed them our materials, which we use and which we teach with and how we do it. And we were testing, really, all right, to find out whether what they thought about our materials, because our future is going to depend upon what institutions like that think of the products that we produce. And we had 2 of their regional directors, and they looked at our stuff, and we explained what we were doing, and they were surprised that we had come so far. They could not believe that we had materials that was ahead of some of theirs, material that we were catching up with some of theirs as well, all right? But that we're on the trail. And they said, look, in fact, one of the women who was a regional director said, my son needs some of the stuff you've got. And she was not a sister either, right? But our materials are good enough. We want to give them to everybody, all right? Is that how do we get ready for after this depression? That's what's going to make the difference in how we really live, how we make it, how you're able to use the knowledge you now have. Is that, and we want to share one of those techniques that's basic to our learning, and basic to building businesses as well, basic to using the skills you have. So we're bringing that one to you this morning. Now, we have a person here who is our senior vice president, and he wouldn't have to be with us at all, because major companies have wanted him to come to them with far more money than we've been able to pay him. In fact, right now we're paying him nothing on this trip. But he cares because he cares about us. In fact, that thing we say, knock on every door, he was the one that said that. Go to every house. Well, we've heard it before, but not doing what we're doing. And he was the one that had that kind of consideration. Is that I want you to listen to him and see, they're getting the papers. You have to map this stuff out. It's called mapping. How do you map out everything that you do? Everything that you do. In fact, working on a plan that you can map out your life for an entire year. If you do, you're a winner. Big businesses map out every step, every small part of everything they do. Because if they don't, they're going to lose. They will fall behind. They will not be able to compete. This is what we want you to share with, this kind of thinking, this method of mapping, so that you can map everything about you. If we'd had this during the civil rights movement, it would have taken about half as long for us to be able to get to where we came to, all right? Is that we used to sit around a table and use our limited knowledge to think, all right? We won, but only because we were right. If we had not been right, we could not have won it all, right? But those who opposed us didn't know any more than we did, and we had a lot more of us, percentage-wise, were degreed than they were, right? But the main thing, they were wrong, right? And we were right. That's really what did it. And here we're dealing now with a situation where there's not right and wrong. There's just a matter of do you know or don't you, right? What kind of skills do you have? And that's the only thing that's going to make the difference. Is that right now we're dealing in a world where that they got skills laid out on 4 levels, and they can tell you within 20 seconds after you fill out the 2 forms that they have for you, they can tell you where you fall, and where you fall on those 4 is going to determine whether you even get a job or not. And I'm more concerned about those who have lost their jobs rather than you that are on the upper end of that and are about to walk out of school with a good deal of knowledge and understanding. But you will be the real leaders of our coming period. Is that we who been leaders over a period of time were your age, right? But what we did with it is what made the difference. What you do with the new knowledge is going to make the difference. When we came to mass meetings in the old days, the understanding was how do we make them remove a law that is hurting us. Today, when we come, the idea is how do we share with you the knowledge and understanding that makes it possible for you to save the rest of us, right? Is that this is the kind of world we live in. I want you to see this method because when I look out my window at SCLC, I look out my window in SCLC, I see a huge building in Atlanta. It's one of the tallest buildings in the city. And how it became that way is Georgia Pacific. It's because of this kind of thinking. And the man who made that company, which is all over the world, has a book out, small book, but central, the science of success. And the science of success comes down to methods and ideas like this one, and we want to share it with you.
How many people like to make a lot of money in this world too? No, you know what, seriously, I even for me spiritually, when I was younger, I kind of made a pact with God. I said, God, okay, God was like, what you want to do? I said, look, I want to make a difference in this world, but I want to make some money doing it. And I kind of felt something spiritually come back to me and say, you can do that just as long as you do it in that order. You know, in other words, try to make a difference and then make some money behind it. And so we teach people all the time about the exchange of value and all these other components, and we try to get everybody to understand what does that mean in a world, in a huge world, in a very huge world. Anybody know by right offhand how many people there are in the world? What's the world population? We crossed over 7 billion last October. We crossed over 7 billion people. And I think the U.S. population by itself is 318 million. We're not even half a billion. So you have to think about the scope and the scale of how the world functions now. And it's getting larger every day to the point of all the things that are going to happen. They actually, for this year alone, they're going to start commercial space flights out of space. You can actually fly out of space for 4 hours. And it's going to continue. They're actually now already selling space on the moon. They're talking about having hotels on the moon within the next 10 to 15 years. We have to have something that teaches us about the scope of things and where we are in the whole scale of what all the things that are happening. Knowledge management, enterprise solutions. There's a whole level of ideas and things that are going. I'm gonna talk about this in a second, but I want to share some additional components too, and especially when I'm amongst college students, because we do this. We actually have a GED series. We have a leadership series, a personal development series, where we try to help people really think through who we are. And a great example of it, and I'm gonna end up doing the samples here in a second, but I'm gonna take you through a quick mental exercise to show you the capacity of what our brains are doing and how we have to even process more. I want you to think for a second. This is gonna seem kind of odd. I want you to think for a second about somebody you really have loved in your life or even currently love, right? Everybody got a kind of image of that person in their mind, right? Then I want you to think about somebody you've been mad at before, almost angry, almost to the point of even saying that you hate. Hopefully they're not the same person, right? So nothing else. So hopefully they're not the same, because it usually doesn't work if it's not the same, if it's the same person. Okay, but here's the thing. I want you to reflect for a minute. I want you to go back internal. We're the sum of our parts, right? There's 86,400 seconds in a day. There's 46 chromosomes in our body, 206 bones in our body, all the structural stuff. But the real person you are is the person behind your eyes. And we've got to be able to learn how to process that and how we see things. So let's go for a second to the person that you love. The person that you thought about that you really love. Now I want you to look internal. Were they more over your left eye or your right eye? And if you can't immediately see it, think about the person you didn't like. Were they over your left eye or your right eye? They're not in the same place, even internally, right? What happens is we take things so much on the surface so often that we don't realize the brain all day long is trying to figure out where to place things and people in our lives and information all day long. Our brain is constantly trying to figure out how to structure that. What corporations have done, that's why knowledge management, I'm telling you, you cannot research knowledge management enough. It is huge. And it's the underpinning of every major decision that goes on in the world now. And sadly, most people at a basic level of life don't have any clue that it even exists. It's called knowledge management and enterprise solutions. I'm telling you, you need to start researching it today. And in regards to talking about research, I tell people all the time I go to Harvard every day. And let me tell you how I go to Harvard every day. And if we have professors in the room, they might stop doing this. So I'm always cautious about what I'm about to say. But the reason I go to Harvard every day, professors all over the country, what they do is they submit their PowerPoints through their network. But what they don't realize, more often than not, their PowerPoints are connected to the World Wide Web. So what I do is literally, if I'm studying if I wanted to study the economy of Albany through research that they've done at Harvard, I go to Google. Does everybody know what PPT stands for? What is PPT? The extension for PowerPoint, right? So I literally go online, I put in Albany, the economy, and then I can put Harvard, PPT. So what you think comes up in my search? Every PowerPoint that's ever had anything to do with Albany comes up. And yet I can put in Harvard and I can find out all the research that Harvard has done. And trust me, they study every city in the country. And so anything you want to do. So you'll be surprised. Again, because I got students in the room, we'll go ahead and say it anyway. But for the professors, is one other thing. But you'll be surprised. More often than not, your homework is out there too. And so it is what it is. And you got to learn how to use your resources. But it didn't beyond that. If you want to see documents or PDFs or any kind of research files, Excel files, they all come right on up. So it's almost the equivalent of getting the equivalent of the Cliff Notes in some sense. But what it does, it keeps me current on the level of studies that are always going out there. You learn all these techniques again. So what was it that I said? What was the primary thing, though? I know I didn't say a lot. What was the primary thing I said you need to research? Knowledge management. I'm telling you, you can't get to it enough. You can just do it in general. What happens is companies are going to hire you and they're going to tell you this is what you do. But they know you know this much. So the moment they hire you, which one you think they're trying to get access to? The knowledge. Because if I can get your knowledge, I can replicate you. And if I can replicate you, companies make more money when they lay off people. People don't realize that. Their stocks go up. Why their stocks going up? Because what they're telling their industry is, I can do more with less. And we are the less. See, so the whole idea is that you've got to have as much of an entrepreneur spirit and understand how to engage corporations. And being a student does not excuse you. The ship does not dictate the ocean. So no matter how pretty and big your ship is, you have to be always current on what's going around in the ocean and the forces that impact it. And you have to be in a constant research mode to figure out what is it that's happening out there and how do I acquire the most current skills to be able to do it. So what I'm going to show you here in a second is a process we call vision mapping. And obviously in this type of setting is a more condensed one, but our goal is to come back and start doing series of these classes. Literally, I mean, we'll take you through the personal life mapping class that we call Vision Quest. It takes about an hour and we can map out your whole life in an hour. It's pretty deep. It gets in conjunction with that thing that I did on the little mind exercise. Another antidote, and this will be my last one, and then I promise you I'll start showing some drawings here in a second. Another antidote is people forget all 3 pigs built a house. All 3 pigs built a house. Most people don't realize in the original story of the 3 pigs, the wolf ate the first 2. And, they changed it later for a nursery type rhyme, right? But no, in the original, the wolf ate the first 2. See, so the whole thing is, what did the first 2 do wrong and what did the third do right? To me, the first pig built the house on feelings and emotion. You can feel good about a lot of things, but it doesn't make it right. right? The second one built it off emotions. Emotions are a little bit deeper. The second pig went in and put some draperies up, made the place look a little bit nicer, and felt a little bit better about it because it was a deeper feeling. But what did the third pig do? The third pig did not cut any corners. The third pig sat down and said, you know what, I'm going to get it right on paper before I do anything else. And that's what happens. The best businesses in the world don't spend a dime until it's even right on paper. They make a commitment to make sure that it's organized, it's structured. We call it IOPSR. I'll talk to you about here in just a second. We call it IOPSR for us. But in regards to us, we're constantly now, within CTVLI and the Leadership Institute that we have, we're constantly recruiting this type of mindset because we know that this is not basic knowledge in the communities, but yet corporations are using it every day to justify why they don't have to have people or don't have to pay people a living wage. We don't want anybody behind. We want you ahead. I tell people all the time, sometimes we're so far behind that because we don't see anybody in front of us, we think we're in first. That's not the case. Usually we're that far behind, right? Okay, so what I'm gonna do real quick, I'm gonna take you through some basic things. And I'm not an artist. I don't even have great handwriting and no promises on my spelling. But that's not the point. The general idea is you have to start getting some kind of outline of what's around you in the external space of our life. We can't internalize everything. We have to be honest about what's the real assessment of what the needs are of the world. Census.gov, by the way, and this is actually part of the mapping process too. If you ever get a chance, take your home zip code, put it in Google, and you're going to get a 30-page report back on your zip code. They pretty much, who are they? Government, universities, corporations, they study us all like lab rats. They really do. Because the more they understand what makes us feel a certain way, the easier it is for them to sell a product or a service to it. And that's all that really matters to them is that, hey, I got to get something out to somebody and I've got to get an exchange. But if you put in your zip code, what it's going to do is a 30-page report. It's going to come back from the Census Bureau and probably from some other universities. And what it's going to show you is it's going to have all the information about you and your neighbors, down to everything except your name and social security number. And that's just because they're not allowed to publish that. But trust me, they have that too. So they're constantly finding ways to get information to tell them about who we are and what we are. But yet we usually only see it from our personal experience. We've got to engage in a deeper conversation. So I'm going to give you an idea. How many people have been to Atlanta before at all? Anybody? Okay, well, good. I didn't want to take it for granted. I never want to take that for granted. So, and I know this might be a little harder to see, but that is actually what Atlanta looks like. That is 285, 75. This is 85. Well, here's 285, 20, 20. We got 75 south, 85 south. And then we've got north, south, east, and west. East over here. And the thing about it is in Atlanta, 285 travels through 4 counties. It's 63 miles long. Highway 20 is the second longest highway in the United States. 75 north, if you actually drive 75 north, you can go all the way to Canada. 85 north will take you up through New York, switches over to another highway system. It'll go up to Canada. 20 east will take you to South Carolina. 75 south will take you to Miami. 85 south, of course, will bring you down this way, head through Alabama, for just about Alabama and Florida and everything that's set up there. And then there's a whole structure. And I'm just using Atlanta as an example. There's a whole structure in Atlanta of where corporate and everything is set up. See, what happens is, and I'm doing this just in a quick little drawing, a quick little flash. We have to have something that takes us up to a 50,000-foot view that allows us to see it from a larger view, right? This allows me to see the whole city and decide where strategies are. With the CT Vivian Leadership Institute, we're now starting to look at street by street. We literally have an entire room dedicated to looking at what are the needs on each specific street in a community. Now, that sounds like a lot of work. We're the third pig. We're getting it right. We're not cutting any corners. We're going to look at all the details of what actually is needed in that community. Atlanta actually has a definitive structure to it. Most people don't realize it. But there's government buildings near the Dome. And then as you move toward Lenox Mall, there's legal, there's advertising companies, there's medical. There's actually a definitive structure within every city. Usually it's that way. Because city planners, if you found a good city planner, that city planner went all across the country and all across the world and designed cities exactly the same. So I don't care if you go to Africa or Paris. Once you get there, you're like, wow, it looks just like my hometown. That's how much structure that's in place. So from there, if I take, and this is supposed to be my little drawing of Georgia, and I know I'm kind of doing it awkward. So you got Savannah here. They're dreading the port in Savannah. They're making the port larger to get Savannah to be able to compete. So industry is getting pulled towards Savannah. Global industry is getting pulled towards Savannah. So Savannah's getting ready to be an entire city. Matter of fact, I just read an article where they were saying the real estate market is going up. All these things are going. Atlanta's actually struggling. Atlanta's actually matching up its data with where Detroit was about 20 years ago. Most people do not want to admit it, but we're matching up almost verbatim on what's happening within there. And then overall, in the U.S. itself, These are my, like I said, these are not my drawing. But the symbolism, the goal of it, this is the type of vision map that we're talking about. But the goal of it is that you have something that you're working from that allows you to stand back from the picture to decide what is the adjustment that I need to make. So we got right at about, I think, 300, last I checked, I think it was 318 million people. But the Southeast is an impact. California literally has entire cities going bankrupt right now. Entire cities, people think cities can't go bankrupt. Entire cities are going bankrupt. See, so this is not a gloom and doom picture. That's not what the goal of this is. But if you don't have a realistic picture of what it is that you actually are addressing every day, how do you know what actions to take? Right? So we got to be able to put those kind of components in place. And another big one too, timelines are vital. They study the past to get a sense of what the course needs to be for the future. So I tell people all the time, a quick way to get perspective on time, put it this way, who was the president when you were born? If you're not sure or you can't immediately think of it, you need to start finding out this all, because you know what it did? It set up the course of jobs that were actually set up in your community. And there's a whole class we do on that just by itself to explain to people that impact may have been, well, whoever the president was pretty much could tell me whether your town or city was having a recession. If your town or city was having a recession, that means it impacted your parents and your guardians, which means it impacted your lifestyle. There's a whole science to just that by itself. See, so timelines are vital. The ability to go back and look at things within decades. It's not a matter of just looking at what's going on now or a projection to the future. You've got to have as much concern as looking backwards and forwards as possible. Does it seem like a lot extra? It is. There's no other way around it. We don't have time to sugarcoat it anymore. The goal is to get people to have honest dialogue about the level of impact that we've got to have, the amount of information that now we've got to consume. And this is just to get us in the game. That's how it's set up, just to get us in the game. What I'm going to show you real quick, and then I'll kind of take some questions on. The thing about it is we got this thing called PSPT. That's one of our primary processes for accountability. Every single thing, every dream, every goal you have is worth planning out. It's worth strategizing out. You can't be afraid of the future. Trust me, we need to be as adamant about the future as we are about what happens to us every day. And definitely need to be as adamant about the future as the events that happened in the past, because we don't want to repeat them. But the PSPT is a basic process that when teams work together, that works always. I don't care what the team is. What it needs to be assigned is the first P stands for primary. Every single thing we do should have a primary person or organization assigned to it. The S here stands for secondary. Everything we do, if we got a primary person or primary organization, we should have a backup. That's what the secondary is. The second P is process or plan. You should always have a process in place. Always, and that's all it is just sitting down, taking the time to do a plan. We watch TV and movies and we forget that there's an entire storyboard behind that movie. That means they sit down and map it out before they ever spend a dime. They try to figure out what each person has to say. So now, the last thing is team. So you got primary, secondary, process, team. The way this works is that everything, if the primary and secondary is not available, someone from the team should implement the process. Someone from the team should always be able to implement the process. That's how it works. So you got primary, secondary, process, and team. Okay, now within that, and these are this is the primary things that we use. And I promise you there won't be anything else. And we're gonna do a sampling of it fairly quick. Okay, this stands for IOPS, we call it IOPS, it's IOPS process. This is the equivalent of our scientific method in a sense. But every business runs this in the background of their business. The I stands for identify or ideas. There are no bad ideas. So what you do is you put up one sheet of paper when you're working with a group of people, let them write down every single idea they have. Every idea. There really are no bad ideas as long as the ideas are not doing any harm. Then the O stands for organize. And at that point, we got to put the ideas into a category. We got to be able to identify what do all these ideas belong to. Do they affect kids? Do they affect adults? Are they for businesses? Are they for government? Are they for nonprofit? Are they for a church? Where does that idea fit? In what category? That's what the organize. This P stands for priority. What is the priority? Out of all those ideas, what are the top 2 or 3 we're going to take? What is the priority of what we're going to do? S is summary. You got to put it into a narrative. You got to be willing to put it into a document of some sort, whether a proposal, whether a presentation, something that lets everybody understand what the overall vision is. The I is for implement. At some point, we got to take action. Look how far the action is away from the planning, right? You don't move to the action immediately. That's what the first 2 pigs did, right? I just want to get a house up. It doesn't need to be that complex. Yes, it is. Hey, we go to meetings all the time, and it only takes a second before I start getting people to realize it's not that simple. It never is. It's simple for operators. It's never simple for the builder. An electrician doesn't look at a room the same way the person sitting in it does, right? So you got to have implementation. The last letter, even though it's at the end, it actually happens all the way through. It's review. You should always be reviewing your process to try to see if you can improve it. And there's always room for improvement. That's why the iPhone 5 came out, right? No matter how good the product is, they always try to find a way to make the product better. These are the type of standards that we got to be able to put in place. These are the type of things and processes and systems that we've got to start researching. And I'm being mild about it. I'm telling you, just between knowledge management and enterprise solutions, there's an entire science of things that are happening. And that's who we're going to ultimately be competing against. Most people don't realize it, but last year, IBM did something on Jeopardy. Did anybody make note of it or notice it? IBM had a computer compete against two of the best Jeopardy champions they've ever had. You can research it. Two of the best Jeopardy champions they've ever had. The computer had to work autonomously. I said that right? It had to work completely without assistance from any other human. Who you think won? Computer blew them out of the water. The computer blew them out of the water. It was allowed to answer the question. It was allowed to read the questions and answer the questions completed on its own. It used an algorithm to determine what the response should be against the humans. And the humans didn't even have a chance. See, so that's the beginning. I'm telling you, that's when Dr. Vivian was saying earlier about the thing of that when he's on the phone, he don't know whether he's talking to somebody from India or talking to somebody from South Carolina. In a minute, you won't know whether you're talking to a human or talking to a computer. Again, none of this intimidates me because I'm aware of it. That's how aware I want everybody else to be. But we've got to take the time again to evaluate as much of what's happening externally, that's the ocean, as we do as what's happening inside of us. And we've got to find processes and systems and different things that will get us there to take us through it. Now, only because of the sake of time, I know I don't have a lot more time to be able to do it. But typically what I do is I make this thing called the balloon board. I ask everybody, what is the challenge? We do have time. I don't know if I'm going to do it quick, and we'll do just about 3 or 4. That IOPS process. Normally, I normally have a big wall, and I map it all out on the wall. But we're using the space here. We actually in Atlanta, we have an entire room that is called our Vision Command Center. It's a vision strategy room. All this that I'm doing now, when you actually walk into our room, and if you're in Atlanta, feel free to contact us and come by and we'll actually show it to you. But we have the Vivian Leadership Institute's entire vision in one panoramic room by Post-it notes. I'm telling you, it's deep. And you can see our entire vision the moment you walk into that room. We have a full global vision, what we're doing in the South, what we're going to do across the country, what we're going to do on the web. All of that's up in literally, you get to visualize. If a picture's worth 1,000 words, then a full vision is worth millions of words, right? And every one of those pieces, we have classes and courses that are set around them. But what I use as an example is, you know how you go to the fair and there's a balloon board, you throw a dart, you pop the balloon, and you win a prize, right? What I'm going to do is I'm trying to get the darkest color I got. Let's see here. I'm going to put some balloons up. For all those that said you wanted to make a difference, what are the things that you wanted to make a difference in? What is it? What's the challenge that you see yourself wanting to meet or participate? And we're going to just do a few of them. If you don't mind, I want you to quickly say real quick. Yes, sir. That's good. That's always a good one. Improving youth. Okay. All right. Anybody else? What else? Just give me a few. What is it? Yes, sir. Community health? Yes. Community health. That's good. That's a great one. Matter of fact, we're going to have some more information on that in just a second. Okay. All right. Give me something else. What do you want to make a difference in? What's your challenge? Improving our schools. Absolutely. All right. Okay. Improving schools. Okay. Give me one more. At least one more. Voter participation. That's good. Okay. Now imagine, and we do this too. I once had 18 people in a room. Between them, there were 21 PhDs. The lady who brought me in, she was like, look, she said, Mike, we've been meeting. She said, we're kind of lost. She said, I've seen you do this mapping process. Can you get everybody organized? So what we did is we actually put something similar to the balloon board behind each person in the room. And that way you could see what they were thinking. And in less than 3-hour time period, we got all of them to be able to dialogue about their specific needs. And yet they could see what each person was thinking, right? So there's ways of using these processes to get everybody, that whole thing of being on the same page. This process is intended to put you on the same punctuation on the same page. That's how deep we want to be able to get people down, because we got to be effective and efficient, and we got to work as teams. So, but to give you an idea, just the 4, so we could have filled up this with all the things that everybody wants to get involved in. But the goal is to get all the ideas out. This is the IOPSA process. So in the I, remember, there are no bad ideas. So this would have let me get everybody's ideas down. Well, when you do it on the balloon type setup, it actually helps me organize it too, because each idea now has its own category. And so that takes the I and the O together. But the P, let me tell you a process to always getting priority. It's real simple for me, and it actually works everywhere. On a scale of 0 to 10, 0 being it does not matter to me at all, 10 being, oh, it's very important to me. By show of hands, what I want to do is I only want to take everything that people feel like is an 8 or above. An 8 or above. If it's below an 8, we're not going to consider it a group priority, right? But doesn't mean that it's not priority. It's just not a group priority. So if I say improving youth, on a scale of 0 to 10, I mean, we're only looking at an 8 and above. How many people would say that by show of hand that that's an 8 or above? Improving youth. That is the majority. See, so if that and that is a solid majority. So with that one, I would put a double check. So we know now that it's a high majority. Okay, community health. And see, hands didn't go up as fast. It's not that it's not a priority, right? But it didn't make to the double check level. Okay, improving our schools. Again, that's a solid majority too. That's a solid. So that's 2. All right, and then voter participation. And it's a slow coming up, but that one actually reached the majority. I'm going to give that one 1 check. Now, just of all these, now remember, I could have done this all the way through. So now we're in the IOP. We've established priority. So the 2 priorities are improving youth and improving our schools. All right, now the next thing would be some type of summary. We being at that point, well, actually the PSPT can kick in. The primary, the secondary, the process team, right? Who in the room would like to be the primary person that if we had to do a project around improving youth? And just because a person said it does not mean that they may have seen themselves as a primary, right? Now we start getting accountability. Who wants to be the primary? Who wants to be the secondary? What process or plan we're going to put together? And is everybody willing to be on the same team for it? Now all of a sudden we're getting the whole group to start mobilizing around an idea. Instead of us sitting in the room having long, drawn-out discussions, we're getting to the meat of it fast. And then at that point, there's other dialogues and stuff that we're able to do to help people through it. Now, the same thing with improving the schools. Who would like to be the primary for improving schools, right? And that's what Dr. Vivian was saying earlier about becoming a personal leader. We can't be afraid to put our hands up and say, look, I'll get involved, and I'm going to take some leadership. And so, because if we sit on the sidelines, I'm telling you, it's one thing to observe something. It's an entirely different thing to be in the participation of it. It's one thing to do something else. Yes, sir. You know what? That's one of the core components that we're working on. And I tell you, yes, we do. As first of all, it's the answer. But I tell you, our whole attitude is, of course, we love volunteers. Oh, but no, we're not expecting anybody to do anything for free. If it has a value, we're trying to get corporations to understand what that value is. So when Dr. Vivian mentioned manpower, we've been going to a lot of corporations, and what we're telling the corporations is we're not the typical nonprofit. We're not asking you to sponsor us. We're asking you to partner with us. If you partner with us and tell us what your sales goals are, we're going to try to actually get you more sales. But the more sales we get you, we want you to give us more money back to run these programs in the community. And the corporations are loving it because to them, all they heard was, you're going to help me make more money. That's all they heard, right? But we need the resources, and government does not have it right now. Local, state, county, and about the only money that's even circulating coming completely out of federal. And so there's a whole thing just in that by itself. So we try to do as much as we can for the volunteers to engage and train volunteers, but the reality is we're trying to help each person be independent and establish something that's interdependent, because we all want to work collaboratively to be able to do it. In the summary stage, we would do a presentation, or we'd put some proposal or something together. In the implementation stage, you just simply define. I was talking to a group this past weekend. If you really want to sound smart, just start talking about things in quarters. I'll give you a great example. First quarter 2013, we plan on finishing going through the entire state of Georgia. Second quarter of 2013, we plan to start establishing all our actual urban institutes in the state of Georgia. Third quarter of 2013, we're going to actually turn around and we're going to start looking at going across the southeast region, right? Because when you start giving things timelines, it sounds definitive. So when you establish what time you want to get something done, and all of a sudden people are like, oh man, you're serious. It's like, yeah, we just learned the language. See, so again, you work through each one of those components. So the implementation, you define the implementation down to a timeline, and then a review, can we improve the process? Always. We can always improve the process. Always improve the process. Now, I tell people this, and sadly I tell them this last, you would never know I was from Memphis as fast as I talk. But seriously, I know I kind of went through that quick, but that's an idea of just working through processes and systems, how we can collectively merge ideas together. It keeps us from being in a room and we're all just talking to each other. Someone in that room has to be the person that's willing to document and structure it. This is not taking minutes. The whole goal of us meeting is what? To reach an accord, to define what our strategy is going to be, and to implement that strategy. Otherwise, why are we meeting? We're not just meeting for the sake of meeting anymore. Those days are done. And especially around us, we're trying to get out here and set that standard. Again, you can't research knowledge management enough, the enterprise solution, try out the PPT thing, and I promise you, you're going to love it. You know, okay, for all the teachers, I'm sorry. But for everybody else, you know, I'm telling you, it works wonders for the most part. And you might find your own stuff out there, by the way, for the professors. Yeah, so any questions or comments at all? And the goal is, even for us, these 4 things, we're going to advocate for those 4 things because we know it came from this community. So the goal of the tour is even to go back to all our partners and say, look, these are things that people said that they needed. And I do have some extra cards, so you can always email or contact us, and we'll put it in the list too. Yes, sir. Well, actually, they. Could you repeat the question? Okay, he was saying, do we have any blogs or any blog sites or any? We're starting to put more stuff online. We have a video up where Dr. Vivian and I have done the Vision Quest workshop together, and then there's definitely a lot of videos of where he's spoken before and talked about these type of programs and services. But we're getting more into that. We're getting a lot more into that. I mean, that's why we're constantly taking pictures and stuff now. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I'll make sure I get y'all some cards and everything too as well. I will. Yes, ma'am.
Question. Could you give me the third area?
In improving schools, in community health,
The first was
improving youth,
the second was,
community health,
and the third was.
improving schools.
And you give me the count.
You said the count. For improving youth, it was an absolute majority.
Give me the count you had. You put down a number.
No, ma'am, I didn't. But I'll give you a general idea of what I remember. Community health, that was about 5.
Did we ask for community health?
Yeah, I did. That was about 5.
Was improving youth? How many? That was the majority.
Solid majority.
Remove one from that because I voted twice.
You said remove what?
I voted twice. Remove one.
Say remove 1? Yeah, I didn't put that. What I did is I did a double check system, and I forgot where we were the other day. Somebody actually was counting, and I was thankful for it. You know, but you're absolutely right. See, by the numbers, then to me, every person that raised their hand on the PSPT, you're on the team. In other words, you learn the process. Now, hopefully someone would step up and say, I'll be the primary, right? But anyone that raised their hand, why would you not? Make it have some meaning. That's what I'm saying. Let's commit to something. And I know, you know, time is stressful on everybody right now, just for how much we have to do. But I'm just saying that has to be a response. Typical organizations, you build a coalition or a committee, and then, you know, you kind of form it around that. But we've got 48 weeks of materials that we share with people, and we don't expect anybody you don't have to use our material. You can use our material as a reference to build your material. And so the goal is to constantly give people the resources and information that they need throughout the process. Yep, there was another hand up a second ago, I thought. Oh, okay. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
I think, you know, your presentation has been fantastic.
Thank you.
But I see a combination of so many disciplines.
Yes.
It's good that presented.
Yes, ma'am.
I see a combination of so many disciplines.
Yes, ma'am.
People, when they go to academia, normally specialize in an area. But those who move in certain other areas, is that when you're talking, I could see so many different disciplines and everything you said. It was a combination. It was something that was very collected academically. So as you stood there talking, it was almost like a professor teaching so many classes, just standing there with you.
Yes, ma'am. And you know what I love about that? And I showed Dr. Vivian this about a year and a half ago. I said the top CEOs, you know normally who are their best friends? A pastor and a professor. A pastor to tell them how people feel, and a professor to tell them what the information, the newest information that's out there. And then the CEO takes both of those collective knowledges, and they make business decisions around it. So trust me, think about who you may know that's in business if you're a professor. That's why they got you around you. And most likely they got a professor and a pastor that's close to them at all times, that's giving them a sense of what the real market is around them. I tell people all the time, I don't hide the magic. We ain't got time to. So I love Bloomberg.com, CNBC.com, USA Today, the business section, AJC, the business section. You know, and you have to know the nature of the language. Language dictates culture. Language dictates culture. So you can't observe what people are doing in their dialogue and exchange enough. And it's cross-disciplinary. It really is. And they talk about that now a lot, because what companies are doing is where engineers would go and get a job at NASA or somewhere else, economists are starting to hire the engineers because they understand complex models. And so here's somebody who didn't even consider going into, economics. They're drawing these people from other fields because they know they need to be able to understand the levels of complexity that are happening now. And complexity doesn't mean that it's impossible to resolve. You just have to get used to the nature of it. That's all it is. So that, we have to embrace the level of complexity. Our brains are not going to explode. They're just, I haven't seen it happen yet. We were saying this earlier, I said, I don't care what the size of the crowd is. It's the spirit of the people that are there. And the whole idea is that people wouldn't come to things like this if they already didn't have a servant's mind. And so I love people who serve people because that's what we want to be in the company of all time is the servants. And so can't thank y'all enough. We would definitely be back. And so this is our way of trying to get out and get a sense of what's the needs really in the community. Who do we need to start addressing? This is the beginning of the dialogue. The goal is to try to find those champions that can give us insight on what's on the ground. And then we'll push as much support from where we are. And we'll make it as much as possible a two-way street. All right. I'm Mike Fleming. I'm the CEO. I mean, not CEO. That's my old company. I'm the Senior Vice President of Operation with the CT Vivian Leadership Institute. It's an honor to serve y'all. Thank you.